So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Van Den Berg, president of Century Management. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today for our first session of our, quote, Beyond the Portfolio webinar series, okay? This series is all about those crucial aspects of your financial plan that don't get as much attention as, say, your investments. But they're just as important in creating a successful financial roadmap. So over the next few weeks, we're going to cover a variety of topics, everything from Medicare and caregiving for loved ones to life and long-term care insurance and some estate planning. And these are the essentials that we believe truly help protect the financial future that we're all working so hard to build. And here at Century, we integrate these components into the financial plans we design because we believe they help ensure you're covered from all angles, whether that's navigating healthcare decisions, planning for unexpected events, safeguarding the legacy you want to leave for the next generation. It's all very important. So today we're going to start off with Medicare, and to help us unpack all the ins and outs, and there's a lot of them, I'm excited to introduce my friend Jamon White, who's the founder of Four Oaks Medicare Planning. Jamon has a degree in economics from Southwestern University and a law degree from the University of Texas, and he is very passionate about Medicare. He loves helping people, loves to help solve problems, and I think it's going to be crystal clear when you hear him speak this afternoon. Jamon will be speaking for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. If you have questions along the way, please put them into the chat box or the question box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get to the questions. We'll also have a replay of today's program on our website and YouTube channel. Give us a day to get it up there onto the website, and you can watch it again or parts of it if you like. So now, without further ado, let me introduce you to Jamon. Jamon, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. It's my pleasure to be here and happy to join you guys and talk about a topic that is about to just come on everybody's radar during this time of year as we approach what's called the annual election period, or if you're approaching 65. So let me go ahead and put up my presentation up here and make sure, Scott, everything look good?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's just jump right in. I want to definitely be respectful of time and make sure that we have time for some questions. But today is about just maximizing your Medicare, really understanding options and benefits. And as Scott mentioned, I have a law degree at University of Texas, and I'm a licensed insurance broker. We specialize in Medicare. This is what we do day in and day out, and it's our pleasure to always be able to come by and assist in this area. So some of the topics that we're going to visit on today, we're just going to be understanding the Medicare basics. We're going to be talking about options and considerations that you need to remember about your Medicare. And then we're also going to hit on just navigating Medicare, especially through some of the upcoming changes that you need to know about for 2025, whether you're on Medicare already or you're approaching Medicare. These are going to be all relevant to what you need to know. So part of our job is we walk with clients and make this not such a maze, a big mess, when you're dealing with Medicare. This is how a lot of our clients before they talk to us feel like. And so if you ever have thought about Medicare a little bit, you might feel like you're just not sure where to begin, not know which way to turn. And so our job is to try to create a straight shot here. So Medicare, because it is a great program, we just want to make the process as smooth as possible. And education is how we do that. We try to educate to help have the answers that you need to make good decisions. So let's just jump right in a little bit on some of the basics. Just to, this might be familiar to some folks, not so familiar for others. So let's lay a little bit of a foundation. So the Medicare program, it's called Original Medicare. That's what you actually get through the government. Social Security actually does Medicare enrollments. And the first thing that you always are doing is enrolling when Medicare is going to become your primary insurance. You enroll in Medicare Parts A and Parts B. That is what makes up the Original Medicare program. So Part A is called hospital insurance, but just think like inpatient. You go into the hospital generally and spend the night. That's going to activate A. It covers some other things, but in general, think of it as an inpatient benefit. Medicare Part B is called medical, but just think outpatient. You go in for a doctor visit or an MRI or even like chemotherapy on an outpatient basis is going to activate Part B. So one of the things just to really remember about original Medicare is there are some significant limitations to it, and it's really important to understand them so that you know how you need to protect yourself when you're going on to Medicare. So for example, I hate to break it to you, but all costs are not covered under Medicare. So you paid into the system, but you are going to have out-of-pocket expenses as you access care under Part A and Part B. And there's no out-of-pocket limit. And we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper in the next couple of slides because that's really a big one to really make sure you understand. Prescription medications are not covered under Part A and Part B either, the ones you pick up at the pharmacy. That's on a separate part. It's called Part D of Medicare, as in David. So just know A and B don't cover that. Routine dental, like also vision, glasses, things like that, are not covered under original Medicare A and B. Remember, A and B is not a long-term care program. It's not going to help with custodial care on a long-term basis. So don't you think Medicare is going to fill that gap. And then also care outside the United States. Just always know that Medicare is quite limited, if any coverage, for when you're traveling overseas or outside of the United States. So let's talk about when typically do you enroll in Medicare? Well, you know that it is the program for those that are turning 65. And so Medicare generally has a 7-month window that you enroll in A and B if 3 months prior to your birthday month, including your birthday month, and 3 months after. Now, Social Security automatically enrolls you in A and B if you're drawing it. If you're not, you go to Social Security to do that enrollment, though you don't have to elect your benefit. But again, this is when you're approaching 65 and when you start considering what you need to do. Sometimes if you're on Social Security like disability or have certain medical conditions, you can enroll in Medicare prior to 65, but those are on much more limited circumstances. We're also going to talk a little bit about some people, and you might be still working, you're working past 65, there are opportunities for you to actually delay Medicare in certain circumstances, and we'll visit about that. And because there's a special enrollment period that you can elect if you are able to delay Medicare when you're losing your employer coverage. So there's some windows that open up as well. And those windows vary a little bit depending upon, again, the certain other things that you might be wanting to add. So it's just always good to keep in mind, start early. Early and ask questions is going to help you be able to navigate things and make sure that you're not missing any deadlines that pop up that you might be unaware of as well. So let's talk a little bit about what A and B actually do, the cost and coverage. What does it cover? What does it not cover? So Part A is generally, this is the inpatient type of benefit, the hospital. For most people, Part A doesn't cost anything. It's premium free. That's if you have worked or your spouse has worked 40 quarters over or the 10 years over your lifetime. That's how you qualify for premium free A. So remember, I said that, not all costs are going to be covered. So when you go and, go into the hospital, it triggers a deductible. It's this year in 2024, it's $1,600, $1,632. So $1,632 is the deductible that you'll have to pay before the hospital benefit is going to kick in. You'll notice that it says per benefit period. Just be aware that you can hit that deductible more than one time a year, depending upon the length of time between your hospital stays. So it's just not an annual deductible. So just be aware of that. And then you'll notice the longer you're in the hospital, there's per day costs that can really kick in as well. And again, there's that no out-of-pocket limit. And again, we'll hit on that on this slide particularly. So Part B, that is the outpatient benefit, as we talked about medical. It does have a cost to it. So unlike A, the base price is set by the government, and it's this year in 2024, it's $174.70 a month. But you need to pay close attention, because depending upon your income, that actually can be higher. There can be an income adjustment for Part B, and we'll talk about what that looks like. But just be aware that you can pay more than the base price that the government sets. And again, there's going to be out-of-pocket costs as well under original Medicare Part B. There is a deductible. This year it's $240, so it's quite low. And then it's typically 80-20 coverage for most services. So 80% Part B is going to pick up, and then generally you're required to cover the remaining 20%. The other thing I want you to note again is it says the no out-of-pocket limit. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think I've now referenced it 3 times, and I want you to not forget it. The reason why there's the pretty big, I call it the ugliest part of Medicare, is that unlike what you might have been used to through an employer plan or insurance that you've had previously, Medicare has no cap. So for example, the 20%, your bill could be 20% of $5,000 or $500,000. There's no maximum out of pocket that caps it to protect you from the unlimited liability of just, the coinsurance amounts. That's typically different than what you've had through an employer plan or even like an Affordable Care Act plan that all have those out-of-pocket maximum as part of it. So just be aware that this is a significant risk that we need to mitigate within the Medicare system, and it's not mitigated when you're going on to just A and B, and just be aware of that, because that is something that will play into decision making on the choices that you have to fill that particular hole. So I mentioned that you can be surcharged for your income. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this, because it's really important to understand it, because it can be a surprise to some people, and that's what we want to try to make sure that you're not surprised. So you'll notice at the very top, you'll see it says 2024 Medicare premiums. So they're always calculating what it would be for you during the current year. But you'll notice the 2 columns on the left side, they're looking at 2022, your modified adjusted gross income. And depending upon whether you're a single filer or a joint filer, you'll notice there's certain brackets as you go down. And as you can see, your Part B premium will go up as your income goes up. And then it does cap at $594 based upon the income levels that you see. So just be aware that they're actually looking back to 2 years prior to make that determination of what your income surcharge will be. And you'll notice there's the 2 columns. It's just not Part B. We haven't talked about it much, but Part D, or the prescription drug plan benefit under Medicare, is also subject to the income surcharge by the government as well. Now, it is a planning thing that you can plan a bit, because remember, they do look 2 years back. If you have a life-changing circumstance, sometimes you're able to come out of it sooner rather than waiting for it to phase out, because it will bump up every year. Next year, in 2025, they're going to look at your modified adjusted gross income from 2023 and so on. But again, these are some things that we always will discuss just to make sure that we get all of the right numbers on the table as we're considering what Medicare is going to look like for you in the future. I always like to hit a little bit of just some important reminders that you need to think about whenever you're coming up and having to consider what to do with Medicare. One of the very common questions that I get every day is, I don't want to be penalized. I keep hearing about this penalty, and that is a consideration that you need to think about, but it's going to depend upon what your situation is on whether you would ever be subject to the penalty or not. The penalty that is the most punitive is the Part B late fee penalty. Essentially, if you just do not go on to Part B, when you're first eligible and you don't have qualified other coverage, it is a lifetime penalty that will add up. It's 10% per 12 months that you're not on B that you should have been on. So it can, and it is there for life. And so it's very important that we don't hit that, but there are certain things that you can do that you're not going to hit that. So let's talk about it. And that's really the other qualified coverage. And that really comes down to what a lot of people are doing if you're still working. It's your employer health insurance. For most people, there is an opportunity to delay B because if you have certain employer coverage, but it's very specific on when you should delay and when you shouldn't. And it really always comes down to how large your employer is. So this is the key, actually. If you work for a company and your employer has 20 or more employees, that's when you can elect to usually delay Medicare if you'd like. And you're not going to be subject to a penalty as long as you keep that coverage in place as an active employee. Because under the way the system works, your Medicare is actually designed to be secondary to the employer plan. So many times people will want to delay B because, as you remember, there's a premium for that. And so a lot of times they will elect to delay B just not to have to pay an additional premium in addition to whatever you might be paying for the employer plan. Now it actually is switched. The place is switched if you're with what I call a small group employer or less than 20 employees. Medicare is actually designed to be primary in that instance. Medicare will recommend that you actually go on to Medicare because they don't want you to have any potential gap in coverage, because primary and secondary, those are really contractual terms that are defined in benefits plans. And so just be aware that you recommend that you do go on to A and B so that you're not subject to a potential gap in the coverage. Now, HSAs is another thing that we get common questions about, and it's a bit of a little landmine, I call it, when it comes to considering Medicare and what you need to do. Because as we talked about, if you delay Medicare, some people delay B, but will go on to A if they're a large group employer, the 20 or more. Because remember, A doesn't cost anything. So why not have the secondary coverage for A? This sort of goes along with your primary employer plan. A lot of people will elect to do that. But if you contribute to an HSA account, a health savings account that you might qualify through your high deductible health plan through your employer, you do not want to go on any part of Medicare, A or B. The reason for that is when you add A, you will be ineligible to continue to make the contributions to the health savings account on your behalf and be able to take advantage of the tax incentives that the HSA gives. The other thing to remember is if you're in the situation where you have delayed A and B because you like contributing to the HSA, just remember that the Part A, when you sign up, goes retroactive up to 6 months or back to your birthday month, whichever is going to be shorter. So if you're waiting and you've been contributing and you're 67 years old and you're ready to go on to Part A, we always recommend that you stop your HSA contribution 6 months prior to when you're going to add A, because it will go retroactive and you don't want that time period of eligibility to then become ineligible and you've been making those contributions. So just be aware, HSAs don't work with Medicare. And so that's a consideration that you'll want to remember. And then lastly, veterans coverage. Not sure why this is the case, but just remember, if you served our country, and thank you, unfortunately, the VA benefits are not considered credible to Medicare. So, a veteran really needs to look hard on whether they want to delay it, because you will be subject to late fees in the future if you fall outside the window of when you first were eligible. The more common one is COBRA. Just always remember, COBRA is not friendly with Medicare. And what I mean by that is Don't think that you can go from your active employee insurance to COBRA and extend that window of being able to delay Part B. COBRA is not credible to Part B. So just remember that can cause you to be penalized and also delay your ability to elect to go on to B. It does not extend that window of time we looked at the earlier slide of 8 months. So you don't want to be caught in that as well. So just those are important reminders if you're still working and you're wondering a little bit about what to deal with how to deal with Medicare. Just remember these things. It'll serve you well in the future. And obviously, if you have additional questions or specific situations, we can talk about that. So let's visit a little bit more about kind of the options that you have when you're considering going on to Medicare. They're very good options, but they're very overwhelming. So if you've been in this space before, you just get inundated with all these different choices, and it can be really, really confusing. So what I always like to do on a discussion like this is the thing that makes it confusing is all of the insurance companies and all those choices. So I always think just forget about the insurance companies right now. Because really, when you're dealing with those issues that come up with A and B, like the no out-of-pocket maximum that we've talked about, the prescriptions, things like that we have to deal with, there's really only two choices that you choose from. And so that makes it a bit easier to understand. So let's dive into the choices a little bit more so that you understand and hopefully have a framework to look within as when you're considering Medicare. So the first choice you'll notice on the left-hand side is you can choose what's called a Medigap plan. It's also known as a Medicare supplement. Essentially, what a Medigap plan will do is it comes in and it is going to basically fill those gaps under A and B that you'd have to pay for. It's going to pay it for you. So you stay on original Medicare A and B, and we add a Medigap plan, and essentially it's going to cover. It could potentially cover almost 100% for you under your expenses. So let's look at a scary chart. So don't worry, I'll break it down a little bit so that it's not so intimidating. But the government allows companies to offer these Medigap plans. They're all standardized by letters, of course, at the top of the top of the chart. But look on the left-hand side. Really, these are the things of what you have to pay under A and B. So if you look down a couple of rows down, you'll see Medicare Part B coinsurance. Remember, that's just the 20% we talked about under B. You go down a little further, you'll see the Part A deductible. Remember, that's this little over $1,600 deductible. So really, those are just your exposures when you're on original Medicare. And a Medigap plan really just comes in and pays almost all of it for you. So I like to look at G and just scan your eyes down that chart, and you'll notice most things say 100%. And really what that percentage represents is how much of that gap the Medigap plan is going to pay on your behalf. So you'll notice the 20% of coinsurance is going to pay it for you. The deductible under A is going to pay it for you. If you look at the G plan, there's really only one place that is completely blank. If you look at it, that's the Part B deductible. Remember that Part B deductible this year is $240. So after that $240, essentially anything that falls under A and B for the remainder of the calendar year under the G plan, your coverage is basically 100%. So it's really, really important to know that these plans are something that you probably haven't ever had before. And it's important to consider a Medigap plan when you're going on to Medicare for the first time or going on to B for the first time. Is you'll notice the slide does say that you have a window of time where there is no medical underwriting to be able to enroll in one of these plans. So of course there's lots and lots of companies, and we help with all of that. But one thing you need to remember is you have a time where you can access one of these plans and you can choose whatever you want, and you cannot be denied for any reason at all. So just be aware of that window does close, and then you will be subject to medical underwriting later if you choose to make a change later sometimes, or if you choose to go on a Medigap plan later as well. One other thing, just as, as we're seeing, I'm going to start putting some tidbits of just some things that we're seeing in the market today. Medigap plans are definitely very reasonable in pricing for a lot of people, but we are seeing some larger increases coming through from different companies. So what company you pick really does matter because sometimes the rate increases can be too much. And we want to make sure that we go with a company that is going to be as stable as possible over the long term, knowing that maybe medical underwriting may keep you from being able to change in the future. So you'll notice that's the Medigap side. I call it kind of the buy-up side because you are paying an additional premium for a Medigap plan. And then we also have to add a drug plan. You'll notice that on the slide as well, Part D. The reason is it's not part of A and B. So the Medigap plan is not going to supplement anything other than things that fall under A and B. So let's slide over now to the second option. Again, this is what you're going to see a lot of commercials about, even more so as we get into the Medicare season. These are called Medicare Advantage plans. They're also known as Part C. So this is the different option that everyone that goes on to A and B has the ability to go on. These are more like the types of plans you've had in the past, maybe by an employer or still have. They're all in one plans. Everything is bundled together. These plans are regulated by the government, but private companies offer them. And they're network-based plans. They're going to be similar to what you have if you have like a PPO plan. It is important. Your doctors needing to be in the network. But this is where a company will provide you your A and B, the hospital and medical component of Medicare. Also, they'll usually bundle in your prescription drug plan. And even sometimes are allowed to include extra benefits like dental, vision, and you'll see those commercials and flyers in the mail for those. These all have out-of-pocket maximums to them, so you do have a protection that's built in there. Remember that original Medicare does not have. But these plans are more of a pay-as-you-go. So unlike the Medigap side, where you're sort of buying up to get that almost 100% coverage, many of these plans have little to no premium to them. So you'll be paying your Part B, but to add one of these plans, you don't really, a lot of times, have a significant monthly expense that you're adding on top of it. But you will pay as you go under these plans like you do under a typical health insurance plan through like co-pays or co-insurance. Some have deductibles. It just depends upon the specific plan. But again, the main thing to remember is most everyone will choose one of these two options. The biggest reason is because of the lack of the out-of-pocket max that A and B that they don't have that out-of-pocket max, and you do have that under these options. So there's protections that are built in there, just depending upon how you want your Medicare to work. I'm not going to read this chart or go into too much detail, but which one is right for somebody, it really just depends upon how you want your coverage to work, the costs that are involved. It really just depends upon how you want your Medicare to work for you. And what's really important is to remember that your choices when you're first going on to Medicare, your ability to get a Medigap plan, for example, can change as you go into the Medicare system over time. So it's really important to make the right decision in the beginning so that you're not feeling like you're in the wrong spot or having to jump around. And the best way to do that is to be educated on what on the topics that we're talking about today, so that you have a good understanding of what the playing rules are, so that you can make good decisions and keep the options open that you find are important for your healthcare. So let's talk a little bit about Part D as well. So Part D, we're going to be hearing a little bit more about Part D than we usually do in the future, particularly even on this presentation, is because Part D is changing. There's things that are being phased in due to legislation that was passed back in 2022 that is affecting the Part D program, particularly from for this year and next year as well. But as a reminder, the Part D prescription drug program is where you have insurance for your medications that you pick up at the pharmacy. And we've sort of talked about it already. There's really two ways that you can get a Part D plan. You either get one from a private company as a standalone Part D plan. Usually that's going with the Medigap option we spoke about. The other is you can get a Part D plan that's bundled within the Medicare Advantage plan. That's the Part C plan that we talked about. So what makes this really confusing is some people are like, well, which plan works best for me? I will tell you, it really is very specific to your medications. All of these plans have different formularies. They all have different tiers of where medications fall. And what works for you can be very different than what works for someone else. So just keep that in mind, that it's very specific to your situation about what would be best for you. But overall, it's important to note a couple of things about Part D plans. All Part D plans have to fit within the structure that the government requires. This year, you'll see it on the slide that there's actually 4 coverage stages that your medicines will go through, potentially, depending upon where they fall in the tiers. More expensive medications, a lot of times, will take you further into the phases, the coverage stages, than like a generic medication. But the overall thing to remember is for prescriptions, many prescriptions don't have just a copay that you pay all year long. Sometimes you'll pay a lot more in the beginning, and then it'll go down, and then it might go back up again, depending upon what phase that you're in. So it's just really important, again, to note that what's going to work for you best really depends upon how your medicines work through the phases, and it ultimately comes down to how much money is going to come out of your pocket for medications. And those are just considerations that are very, very important. Now, one thing that I want to kind of talk a little bit and introduce, if you're not familiar with Medicare, is the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022, has been phasing in certain more protections for seniors, which for many people is a very, very good thing. You'll notice in 2024, like for this year, the last phase of coverage, the catastrophic phase, you used to pay 5% coinsurance when you were in. That's for those that have really expensive medications that get to that last phase. This year, it actually went to 0. So anyone that hits that phase actually does not pay anything additional for their medications for the remainder of the calendar year. Now, next year in 2025, the law requires all of the companies to put on a $2,000 maximum out of pocket for Part D prescription coverages. So again, that's going to continue to lower the out-of-pocket costs that the senior may have, particularly those that have very expensive medications and were subject to pretty hefty coinsurance amounts and deductibles in the past. So that's very, very good news for many people. And then also you'll notice those are the big changes in 2026 and beyond. That's where the drug negotiations are happening, where Medicare is negotiating drug prices on specific medications over the years. So there'll be some additional things that phase in with those as well. So, but the biggest thing in 2025 is the $2,000 out-of-pocket max is being implemented. Now, there's always a repercussion a little bit when we see the government change and strengthen a program, depending upon how they fund it. So one of the things I just wanted to show you is some of the impacts we're already seeing are filtering down through actually the Part D premiums that many people, seniors, are paying. You're just going to note on this chart, it just kind of tells you the percent of enrollees that had plans that their premium increased by more than 25% between 2022 and 2023 and 2023 and 2024. Remember, in 2024, they removed the catastrophic phase where it went down to 0. There was a corresponding adjustment where premiums for Part D plans went up. So enrollees that experienced 25% increases or more, 45% were hit in 2024. So just note that in 2025, there's going to be another potential hit here because of the funding mechanism. And so just what it comes down to is there's disruption in the Part D market right now. And so just be aware that it's causing premiums to start increasing due to the insurance companies having a greater liability to pay for the out-of-pocket max once the out-of-pocket max is hit. So when the insurance company has more liability, they usually will pass it through in higher costs or reduced benefits. So just kind of, that's a little bit of a navigating Medicare for 2025. Be aware that we're seeing some of these types of things hit to such an extent that you'll notice the little slide on the right-hand side. The government actually put in place, I believe it was last month, a demonstration program that essentially really wanted companies to rebid and to get extra money so that they could try to bring down those Part D bid costs because they were a little bit, I guess, unnerved. So they're trying to limit the impact that seniors would have on Part D drug plans. So all this to say, it's a lot of information, but it really just comes down to, if you're already on Medicare, you just want to be able to remember that there is some disruption that is occurring right now, and you want to just pay particular close attention to what the plans are doing for next year, particularly how your drug plan costs are going to be impacted just due to this. I believe over time, things will work itself out. But the stabilization, the demonstration program is one key indicator that there was maybe some unintended consequences where they weren't quite sure that they had taken into account. And so they were putting in a program to try to ease the entering into the 2025 year in premium impacts. So if you're already on Medicare or you're upcoming, I always kind of give some takeaways on for next year. We've hit a bit on the 2020, hit on it a bit, but for 2025, I just want you to think of some things. It's really important when you're on a Medigap plan or the Medicare supplement that we are seeing premiums continue to rise. Just utilization's up post-COVID, inflation, everyone's feeling it. It is working itself into the medical system as well. Even if you're subject to underwriting, if you see your premiums having gone up a lot, if you can medically underwrite, you can shop those supplements for lower premiums. Seniors with high dollar medications are going to absolutely benefit from the $2,000 out-of-pocket maximum to be implemented in 2025. But there's some upward pressure on these Part D premiums as the insurance companies' liabilities increase. And again, we see the demonstration program as a way the government's trying to address that in the short term, since the premiums were coming in a bit higher than they had expected. Some seniors may be thinking about moving to Advantage plans to offset some of the rising costs, whether it's on their Medigap plans or Part D premiums. But we're also seeing, remember Medicare Advantage plans even have the Part D aspect as part of their program as well. So Medicare Advantage plan premiums and benefits may also be negatively impacted due to this new legislation. So again, to sum up again, this is going to be much more of an active Medicare season. And if you're on Medicare, that would include you, just to be more aware and focused on what's really happening to your plan so that you can take advantage of the times to make adjustments and changes when you're allowed to. So just so you know, when it comes to Medicare Advantage plans and Part D drug plans, there is one time of the year where you're able to make these changes. That's why, this time of year is where we're gearing up, because between October 15th and December 7th, that's when you're going to see people, you're going to have the ability to make changes based upon what's going on with your plan. Now, something to be aware of is if you're already on Medicare, the annual notice of change is arriving in mailboxes this month, in the month of September. That's a really important document because it's really going to tell you what, again, is going to happen, particularly to your Part D drug plan or your Medicare Advantage plan. And you can make changes based upon those changes during this time of the year. You have more limited times, and sometimes you don't have the ability to make certain changes outside of this window. So that's why it's really great that Scott's putting this on, just to make people aware. If they're already on Medicare, you need to pay close attention in the fall. And if you're not on Medicare yet, you'll kind of see why it's important to have someone in your corner really helping you keep abreast of what's going on with Medicare for this upcoming year. So every year we put together a survival guide. We'll be updating this. All the things that we talked about today are based upon 2024, but the government does tweak these numbers each year. And so every year we put together a survival guide just to kind of summarize the information that we talked about today, and also just make sure that you have the most up-to-date information that you need. And then obviously you can go to our website, go4oaks.com, to get a lot more additional information, videos, additional trainings. We just try to make sure that people stay abreast of what's going on in the Medicare world. And then finally, just here's my contact information. If you have any specific questions, we are coming up into our review season for our clients. And obviously, we're always working with new clients all of the time. So if you have, if you're needing help with Medicare because you're new to Medicare, obviously reach out to us. If you're already on Medicare, we absolutely will. We do reviews for Medicare Advantage plans. We will obviously review your Medigap plan. Just as a reminder, we only do Medicare drug plan reviews for our clients, our specific clients, meaning for those that we do have, that we're their agent for their Medigap or their Medicare Advantage plan. But you want to stay abreast of all of this. And obviously you can always reach out if you have any specific questions. But Scott, I'll hand it back over to you as far as if there's anything you'd like me to expand upon.
That's great, Jamon. Yeah, leave your contact slide up here so people can write that down. But one question, so how do people work with you? They're going to work with you for your coaching on what they should do, and you can help them get the Medigap or Medicare Advantage plan. That's what you do. And what is your cost to do all that?
Yeah, so if you look below my smiley face, all of our services are always free. So we do not ever charge anything. So, our compensation runs through the insurance companies. For many of these costs, the compensation that we get, it's a lot of it's set by the government. There's not a lot of variation, so part of our job is to really walk alongside someone and really help them navigate through the system. We're very relational at Four Oaks, meaning, we really want a long-term relationship, so we try to not only help people, educate people on the Medicare process and do enrollments, but also as we're doing today, we keep in contact with all of our clients from year to year just to alert them to changes and things like that. So how you work with us, we pretty much will be happy to work on a plan, whether it's Medigap, Medicare Advantage. We would love for anybody to reach out, and we're always happy to help.
Great. So here's another question. So I've heard two conflicting pieces of advice. One, research plans each year to get the best match and price, versus if you change plans, you would have to go through underwriting to go back. So pick a good plan up front and hold on for dear life every year after that. Is that which is right?
Yeah, so when it comes to the Medigap side, it's very important that you pick the right company. Medigap plans are all the same. Like a Plan G from one company versus the other is going to be the same as just like a Plan N. And so, but the company does make a difference because the biggest difference between the company options is going to be the price that you pay. One thing that I will say is you want to be careful if you're going to go with a no-name company or even a company that their business is not Medicare. The reason is because there's safety in numbers. So by what I mean by that is, insurance is about spreading risk. So if you have a lot of people in your plan with you, that helps spread the risk and what helps keeps rates from going up too quickly. And that's what I found with some of the plans that are not as well known or don't have as much market share, as you'll find that they might have a great rate coming in, but what is their track record 3 or 4 or 5 years from now? Because while you can shop it, the medical underwriting is what will limit you in the future. So at Four Oaks, what we really try to do is we look at it from the long term. And so the long term means, sure, we can shop it if we need to and take advantage, because sometimes we just see increases come in that we weren't predicting on, even some of the larger companies. But we also want to take into account that, look, you want to find a place and be comfortable with a company so that in case you cannot get medically qualified in the future, that you're not going to be feeling like you're in a runaway train with premiums on a Medigap. And so we want to look at it both ways. And so holding on for dear life, Medigap plans, I don't really want to look at it that way. Don't be afraid of medical underwriting. There's sometimes I will process someone's application and it'll be medically underwritten before we hang up the phone in real time and it's approved. So it's not something to be afraid of, but just note that we want to always make sure you're matched with the top company so that if you cannot qualify in the future due to something going on with your health, that you don't feel like you're in the runaway train, that you're in a good spot.
So Jamon, you're saying that these companies that offer a Medigap policy, they all charge the same premium or they all offer the same service but charge different premiums?
Right. So the Medigap plans themselves are all standardized by the government. So if you get a Plan G from Company A, or you're looking at a Plan G from Company B, generally they are required to cover the same things. But the premiums that they charge will vary. And the premium rate increases that they charge will definitely vary over the years to come. So you want to make sure that the company that you're electing not only is well qualified in the area of Medicare and well qualified financially, but that you're in there with a lot of people. Having a big market share is good. You don't want to be stuck with very few people in there with you, because as the population in that group gets sicker, they're going to try to make their profit, and they do it in ways of like premium rate increases if they don't have enough to cover the claims that are coming in. The claims.
So can you question here? People can choose to change Medigap and Medicare Advantage plan every year. That was correct?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So Medigap plans actually are not subject to the annual election period. You can actually shop a Medigap plan any time of the year. You can change it all year long as you can medically underwrite. A Medicare Advantage plan, the Part C, there is not medical underwriting. And that's where every year between October 15th and December 7th, you can shop the Medicare Advantage plan. And that's when you can make changes to it. Now, you can always go back to original Medicare and add a Medigap, but you're likely to have to answer health questions. So you would want to have that conversation first to just make sure you could qualify. But Advantage plans you can shop from year to year, and many people are going to elect to do that during the annual election period that's coming up.
For if someone's going to reach 65 years old next August, by what time should they enroll in Medigap or Medicare Advantage?
Yeah, so I mean, remember the enrollment time for original Medicare is 3 months prior to your birthday month. So 3 months prior to your birthday month is when you can enroll in original Medicare and get your Medicare number. Now, Medicare Advantage plans or Part D plans, you have to have the Medicare number to enroll in those. So we would have to wait until you got that Medicare number to do that enrollment. Now, Medigap plans, many companies, you don't have to, so you could actually put a Medigap plan in place months before that if you elected. I would tell you most clients that I work with, we usually plan before and get everything and finalize decisions, and then we usually enroll in everything kind of at the same time. But if you want to do it and do it at separate times, you can. It's just we're limited on those other two that we need the Medicare number, and that would put us in that 3-month window before your birthday month.
So, Jamon, so we've got a lot of people on the phone that live here in Texas, which you obviously have the insurance license for. But what if they're living out of state, Arizona, Florida? We have some people on the call. Do you work in other states?
Yeah, so we are in those states, the ones you listed. We're not in every state in the United States, but we're in probably about half now, 25 to 26 of them. Really the way that the reason we're in certain states is because when our clients move, we just move with them so that you don't have to start over with a completely new person. So we're always happy to work with people in other states as well.
Yeah, so if you weren't currently in a state, licensed in a state, you and I had talked about this the other day. It's just a matter of there's a lot of reciprocity with the license, so it's a filing fee, and now you're licensed to continue to.
Yeah, it's a very easy process, and that's why we go where our clients go. So we just try to continue that relationship. So because we feel very comfortable with our clients. So when y'all become a client with us, most chances are we haven't met a state yet that made it unsurmountably difficult. We'll just travel along with you. But yeah, like Florida, Arizona, California, those are all states that we're in, and probably about 20 to 25 other ones.
Great. And for those, when we were talking about those IRMA taxes, those extra premium costs, if you're in a certain income bracket, and it looks back 2 years, at some point, let's say someone's retiring or for whatever reason the income goes down, will those go away at some point, or are those permanently locked in?
No, they're not permanent. So remember, every year it goes up with you. So this year in 2024, they're looking at that tax return from 2022. Next year in 2025, it will move up to 2023, and it just continues. So eventually you will phase out if your income does go down for a number of reasons. It will eventually phase out. It'll catch up to the current year that maybe that income fell. But remember, there also, if you go to ssa.gov and look under the Medicare tab, there is a way that you can appeal the IRMA or the income surcharge based upon certain factors, like work reduction or work stoppage is one of those. If you fit within one of those categories, you actually can appeal it based on changed circumstances and get out of it even sooner rather than like the 2-year phase out, essentially, for it to catch up.
So, Jamon, if you want to delay your Social Security so that you can get the higher amount, you want to delay that for a few years, how do you handle the Medicare side, whether you're employed or maybe you're not employed, you retire at 65, you want to keep delaying Social Security, what do you do?
Yeah, so it's very easy. I mean, Social Security handles the Medicare enrollments, and so when you go online to enroll in Medicare, there's a way that you can enroll in Medicare only. So that just means that they're going to handle your Medicare enrollment to go on to A and B at that time, and you're delaying the decision to execute your Social Security benefit until later.
Okay. One more question. This one is for me. What would you say would be the one or two biggest issues or mistakes that people make where you see there's just problems that maybe you could verbalize here to prevent something like that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the major mistakes or issues that I do see come up is, one, delaying Medicare for the wrong reasons. Sometimes people just don't understand that the employer size really makes a difference on whether you should delay Medicare or whether you would like to delay Medicare or not. HSA contributions is another one just to remember. I've had people that have actually thought that they could delay Medicare and go on to COBRA for 18 months. They thought that that was a great plan. They went on COBRA for 18 months and said, hey, I'm ready to go on to Part B now. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to do that until the general enrollment period in January. So it's really that slide.
In that situation, did that 10% penalty kick in too?
Yeah. Yes, the 10% penalty will kick in because it's at least a 12-month period that they did not elect to go on to B. And just remember that you have an 8-month window to go on to Part B when you lose employer coverage. So you can go on to Part B and you're not delaying it. COBRA does not do that. If you're in the 18-month window of COBRA, your 8 months is over. If you're outside the 8-month window, you now not only are going to be penalized, but you're not going to be able to go on to B when you want to. You're going to have to wait to go on to it during the general enrollment period, which is only 3 months of the year between January and March. So COBRA is just a dirty word in the Medicare world a little bit, just because it acts and looks like employer coverage, but it's not treated as such.
That's great. And one last question: do you typically have a review once a year with your clients just to check in, or do they check in with you, or how does that work? Do you need an annual check-in with Medicare and in this part of the world here?
Sure. I mean, part of, like I said, is we educate, and then also we reach out to all of our clients every single year to offer a review. Some people are satisfied and they look at their annual notice of change, and things will just usually sometimes auto renew if they're just not wanting to make any changes. Other people elect to do a review, sometimes every single year. So we always give the ability for all of our clients to have a chance to have us look over what's going on, just to make sure that they're not going to be surprised come January when they did not know something had changed that was going to impact them particularly negatively.
That's great. Well, Jamon, thank you. We're coming up on 1 o'clock, so we're right at an hour here. So thank you very much. This has been really educational. As many times as we've talked, I still take notes. It's great. So all of you on the phone, you're welcome to reach out to Jamon directly if you have questions for him. If you'd like to reach out to me or any of your service advisors to ask a question, we're happy to help too. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks.